Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and have a good day to my respected lecturer, Professor Madya Dr. Muhammad Shahnawi Muhammad Pirus. Today, I will be presenting a case study on Muhammad Muhammad Lau bin Abdullah versus Pembangunan Pertanian Melaka Sdn Bhd. This case is related to constructive dismissal, where the claimant argued that the employer's actions had made it impossible for him to continue working, even though he was not directly terminated. In this presentation, I will discuss the facts of the case, the events that lead to the dispute, the issues raised before the court, the judgment, and my analysis and critique of the case. First, let me explain the background of this case. Muhammad Muhammad Lau was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of Pembangunan Pertanian Melaka Sdn Bhd on 1st April 2020. He was employed under a 3-year fixed-term contract. The dispute started in January 2022 when allegations of misconduct were made against him. The company pressured him to resign, but he refused because he believed he had done nothing wrong. He repeatedly asked the company to provide evidence supporting the allegations. However, according to the claimant, sufficient evidence was not provided. Later, on 25 March 2022, he was suspended from work pending investigation. These events eventually lead to a breakdown in the employment relationship between both parties. After the suspension, several actions taken by the company further escalated the situation. Firstly, the company appointed a new CEO while the claimant was still under suspension. Secondly, internal memos were circulated to the employees informing them about his suspension. The claimant was also restricted from entering the company premise. A domestic inquiry was later conducted to investigate the allegations. However, the claimant argued that the inquiry was unfair because he was not given a proper opportunity to defend himself and the process lacked procedural fairness. Because of these actions, the claimant felt that the company no longer wanted him to remain in his position. Next, issue of the case. There were 3 main issues considered by the industrial court. The first issue was whether the claimant had been constructively dismissed. The second issue was whether the company had breached the implied term of mutual trust and confidence. This term refers to the obligation of both employers and employees to maintain trust and act fairly towards each other. The third issue was whether the company had just cause or excuse for the dismissal. These issues were important because they helped the court determine whether the employer's actions were lawful and justified. Moving on to the judgment of the case, after considering all the evidence and arguments presented by both parties, the industrial court ruled in favor of the claimant, Muhammad Muhammad Lau. The court found that the claimant had successfully established a claim of constructive dismissal. This means that although he was not directly terminated by the company, the employer's actions had created a situation where the employment relationship could no longer continue. The court observed that the company had taken several actions against the claimant, including pressuring him to resign, suspending him from work, appointing another CEO during his suspension, restricting his access to the workplace, and withholding his salary and bonus payments. The court also found that the company failed to provide sufficient evidence to prove the allegations of misconduct made against the claimant. As a result, the employer could not justify its actions. In addition, the court concluded that these actions had breached the implied term of mutual trust and confidence, which is an important obligation in every employment relationship. Therefore, the court held that the dismissal was without just cause or excuse and awarded the claimant compensation amounting to 284,162 ringgit and 36 cents. Overall, the court emphasized the employers must follow proper procedures, provide adequate evidence, and ensure fairness before taking disciplinary action against employees. For my analysis and critique, I would like to discuss three important points. The first point is the breach of mutual trust and confidence. In my opinion, the company's action, such as appointing another CEO during the claimant's suspension and restricting his access to the workplace, created the impression that the company had already lost trust in him before the investigation was completed. I agree with the court's finding because trust is very important in maintaining a healthy employer-employee relationship. The second point is the domestic inquiry. The claimant argued that he was not given a fair opportunity to defend himself. These raised concerns about procedural fairness and natural justice. Based on the literature by Ismail and Mohammed Rosli 2025, employees should be given the opportunity to know the allegations against them and respond fairly before any disciplinary decision is made. The third point is the withholding of salary and bonus. I believe this was one of the strongest points in the case because salary is fundamental right of every employee. Employers should not withhold wages without proper legal justification, as it may affect employees financially and damage the employment relationship. Overall, I agree with the court's decision because the employer failed to follow proper procedures and did not ensure fairness throughout the disciplinary process. For this case study, I referred to the Industrial Court Award as the primary source. I also used several academic journal articles related to the domestic inquiry, unfair dismissal, employment termination, and procedural fairness to support my analysis and critique. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Prof.